From Wall Street to the White House, this is the Larry Kudlow Show.
Welcome back, everybody. This segment of the Larry Kudlow Show, sponsored by Priority Gold. Proud to have him as a sponsor. We're going to talk some money and politics. We got Liz Peek, Fox News contributor, syndicated columnist. We got Steve Moore, Committee to Unleash Prosperity Hotline, and WABC radio host of More Money. Following this show and many of these same stations. Steve Moore, I want to begin with you. The Supreme Court opened the door to unrealized capital gains tax. Opened the door. Didn't say it specifically, but they opened the door. So I have a big problem with that. Actually, I have a big problem with the capital gains tax. I want to abolish the entire capital gains tax. These guys are saying, well, wait a minute, we could have an unrealized capital gains tax. That's what Liz Warren wants, Senator Warren, and Senator Bernie Sanders. Now, this is not good. This is not the kind of tax reform that we want. What's your take on it?
Is that for me, Larry?
It's for you. I've served it up for you.
Usually Liz goes first.
I know, but you're Mr. Flat Tax Reform.
Go first. Anyway, so look, there's another element of this that it touches, and something else we should get rid of, which is the evil death tax as well.
Mm-hmm.
Which, is the quadruple tax on people who save and invest and build up money that they want to leave to their kids and their grandkids. So. This was a very controversial Supreme Court decision. I don't really quite understand the legal arguments one way or the other, but I think it's bad economic policy for sure. Because what you're going to get here, I'm going to make it very simple for your listeners. Let's say let's say you have a farm, and let's say you're an Iowa farmer, and let's say 25 years ago you bought the farm for $500,000, and let's say here we are 25 years later, and it's worth $5 million. And now, under this plan, and by the way, Biden wants to tax the unrealized capital gains. Mm-hmm. This farmer who has a $4.5 million paper gain in terms of the valuation would have to pay like a 40% tax on that gain. They haven't sold. They don't have the money to pay the tax. So what I'm saying, Larry, is under this kind of evil system, people would have to literally, not figuratively, literally sell the farm to pay the taxes. It's the same thing with the shares of stock. Small business ownership. I think it would wreak havoc on the economy.
It's wealth confiscation, Liz Peek.
Yes.
It's wealth confiscation. And Liz, first of all, you know this. You worked on Wall Street. I worked. One of the things you learn is an asset is only worth what someone will pay for it. Now, you would have this, the IRS presumably would be valuing the asset because there's no market trade going on. And this will wreak havoc over everything. But it's all phony. It's just an attempt to confiscate your wealth. And I'm surprised that a conservative Supreme Court even allowed this to creep in.
Well, I think there's been varying interpretations of what the court actually decided. And even though they didn't completely squash the idea of taxing unrealized gains, they certainly did not come out and say it was permissible. But, Larry, to your point, it's completely unmanageable. I mean, at the most simple basis, imagine if you own a stock and it goes up 30%, you don't sell it, but you have to pay the tax on it. What happens the next year when it goes down 30%? Right. Do you get that money back? Right. That's one issue that this is why I don't think anyone actually has an unrealized gains tax in any of the developed countries. I could be wrong about that. But there's also the element that you raised about who in the world is going to be out there valuing these things. People have enough problems valuing, real assets and stocks and bonds that are daily traded. But what if you have a share in a business that has a losing year, and then it has a winning year, and then it has a losing year? I mean, the whole thing is completely unimaginable. I honestly don't think this will go anywhere. It's offensive in its nature. But the reason we need to talk about it is because Joe Biden talks about it. He says people have a 10% tax rate. It's because he is including in their basis or in their income things that aren't income, but that are, in fact, realized gain or unrealized gains in asset value. So it's something that has to be addressed. But honestly, I cannot imagine ever getting something like this through Congress.
I'm
And can I
opposed.
just add one thing to that, Larry? You and Art Laffer taught me that when you tax something, you get less of it. We want Americans to build up wealth, right? In other words, the incentive structure. Arthur Laffer talks about this all the time. If you're going to tax people on their wealth, and you're going to pass it if they try to pass it on to the next generation, guess what? They'll just spend it all. They'll just spend it so that the government can't take it away from them.
But let's go back to that. I'm opposed to the capital gains tax, period, full stop. Yeah. Why are we taxing investment? We should be taxing consumption. Why are we taxing wealth? I mean, I'm okay taxing income, but I'm not okay taxing wealth and investment. And look, the economy used to grow. The long-run trend, I was talking to Steve Forbes about this earlier in this show. Mm-hmm. I don't care how far back. You can go to since World War II. You can go back through the 19th century. The American economy used to grow at 3.5% a year after inflation for hundreds of years. But for some reason, in the last 25 years, we've stalled out and we're growing less than 2%. The Congressional Budget Office, which not only painted a picture of federal finance bankruptcy, but also stagnant growth of 1.8%. Look, we need to stop taxing wealth, investment, and seed corn that would produce, an innovative economy, raise real wages, improve productivity, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, that's where the conversation should be, not taxing wealth or unrealized capital gains. We shouldn't tax it. And, Steve, whatever happened to indexing capital gains? No one's even talking about that anymore.
Yeah, it wasn't really an issue since Reagan, the end of the Reagan years, because we had squashed inflation. Inflation had only been growing at, 2 or 3%. Then Biden comes in, takes it up to 9%. Arthur Laffer and I just did a little study showing that, now with the higher inflation, you could be the tax on capital gains if you own an asset, say, for 5 years and it appreciates, by say 40%, you're going to pay a 50% tax on that. I mean, who's going to invest? If you assume a risk when you buy a stock or you start a business, so you could lose everything. And as Liz was saying, they don't give you the money back if they don't reduce your tax if you lose money. By the way, did you also know, Larry, that you cannot fully deduct your losses from your gains? The whole thing is crooked.
I know. I agree with that.
It's just a money grab. And look, none of it has to do with our budgets or our deficit. It's all about reapportioning wealth, right? I mean, this is all redistribution stuff. Mm-hmm. Because and I was really happy to see, I think it's the Wall Street Journal, someone else talking about the fact that it is not spending, it's not tax receipts that are so out of whack with history and norms for our country. It is all spending. And somebody, even Jay Powell, finally, Jay Powell said we have to have an adult conversation about our unsustainable spending. Well, where has he been?
Right. And by the way, do you guys remember when Barack Obama was asked in one of the debates about, well, why do you want to raise the capital gains tax when you raise the capital gains tax, you lose revenue? And he said, well, I want to do it because it's the fair thing to do.
Yes,
exactly.
How
is that fair?
Actually, that was it was a TV interview. I mean, it's interesting on this whole subject. The budget, the CBO report, which shows federal finances are going bankrupt. I mean, that's the only way you could put it. So you got, I haven't read it yet, but Jerry Seib of the Wall Street Journal, or whatever he is, retired editor, will debt sink the American empire? And I read this in the last segment. I'll read it again. Historian Neil Ferguson, you guys know Neil, he's a very smart guy. Historian Neil Ferguson recently invoked what he calls his own personal law of history. That is, any great power that spends more on debt service than on defense will not stay great for very long. Well, guess what? We are spending more on debt service than we are on defense. And that's going to get worse. And apart from the fact that we're going to go to $50 trillion of that debt in public hands, and it's going to be 122% of GDP, I mean, interest expense more than defense, really? You think China's doing that? I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so.
It's a very worrisome trend, and there doesn't seem to be any correction in sight. And I think, after this election, somebody has got to tackle this, Larry. And the problem is no one really has the courage to do so. I mean, it's just, and we all know that it's a very small percentage of the spending that is discretionary. So much of it is Medicare and Social Security. And under Trump, the head of the Social Security Administration, Andrew Saul, was actually trying to implement various measures to improve it. But the minute Joe Biden was elected, he threw out Saul and all those changes that were being proposed, minor changes, by the way, because what we really need is some bigger changes. And I have to say, Nikki Haley actually came out and endorsed, raising the retirement age. That sent everybody into absolute catatonic fits. But there are things that have to happen because the whole premise of Social Security is so outdated. It was based on, people living 10 years beyond the proposed retirement age, and that's just completely gone.
Saul was a good guy. I knew him.
Very much so.
Yeah, he was a good guy. He was a pal of David and Adele Malpass. We had a couple of dinners together. I want to take a break because I've got a couple of other, but they're all big picture themes. So let's take a break now. Liz Peek, Fox News contributor, Steve Moore, WABC radio host of More Money. I'm Kudlow. I want to talk about tariffs and taxes on the other side of this. We'll be right back.
Larry Kudlow. From Wall Street to the White House, this is the Larry Kudlow Show.
Talking money and politics with Liz Peek, Fox News contributor, and Steve Moore, committee to Unleash Prosperity Hotline, and WABC radio host of More Money, which is cooking up on many of these same stations right after this show. So I got one for both of you. Tariffs replacing taxes. This is in the air. I'm not saying any proposals specifically, but suppose you had a 10% tariff, which would replace the entire corporate tax. And the numbers here are pretty close. The corporate tax is raising about $425 billion in revenues, and more or less $4 trillion of imports, 10% tax, $400 billion. So call it a push. But it's like a border adjustable tax. It's not that different from the European VAT, except it would get rid of the corporate income tax. What do you guys think about that? I'll start with you, Liz Peek. What do you think about that?
Thanks.
This is an idea you may hear more of, like it or not. That's why I want to have some fun with it.
Well, okay. So my view of the corporate tax is that it's perfectly okay to have corporations pay taxes. I don't see any reason why they should not. But I also think it needs to be competitive with the rates in other countries. So when you start talking about 28%, 30%, 35%, then you're not. You're making American corporations uncompetitive with their rivals around the world. That doesn't make sense to me. Why should American consumers basically pay 10% more? Because that would, I guess, be the outcome on everything that's imported into the country. I think the question is, will that tariff realign sourcing? I mean, will it be the case that there's more stuff made in America because we put on a 10% tariff? My concern would be that every other country we do business with is going to retaliate with a similar kind of tariff, which would ameliorate whatever positive benefit on sourcing we get out of it. So, bottom line, I don't particularly like the idea.
Well, you could negotiate through. This, by the way, is very similar to what Paul Ryan proposed.
Yeah, with the VAT.
That's right. And had a lot of support. Kevin Brady, the then chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, in the 2017 tax discussion, the Trump tax cut discussion, we buried that, Steve Moore. You and I did, Steve Forbes did, Laffer did.
I remember that.
We went directly to Kevin and told him not to do it. But remember, Trump loves reciprocity. He could negotiate trade deals left and right if he had this authority. But also remember, corporations don't really pay taxes. Individuals pay the taxes. So you'd be giving everybody a pretty nice tax cut, which would at least offset, if not more, the tariff. See, that's what people are missing here. Corporate tax, okay, we all pay it. Consumers pay it. Wage earners pay it. Investors pay it. That's what it's just. It's a pass-through tax. Corporations don't. I mean, who's a corporation? It's just a piece of paper. So anyway, Steve Moore, what do you think? Is this a viable idea or is this a nutty idea?
Well, I generally agree with just about everything that Liz just said. I would just add to that the worry that I would have, if you could actually do it, it might be a pretty good trade. But what worries me is you're going to get both.
Yeah, no, right, right.
So that's my worry. But the other thing is that, I do get a little bit annoyed when people, Trump's going to create a trade war. And I know that what Trump would say if you were on your show, he'd say, we are in a trade war. I mean, these other countries do impose a lot of tariffs on the United States. And let's not forget that other countries have VATs, which are just GATT legal, tariffs on American goods and services. So, look, I want to do what is ever, and I'm with Trump, put America first. Whatever in our interest in a competitive way to create more jobs, bring more factories here, more, higher wage jobs, I'm in favor of. Whether this or not would work or not, I don't know. It's a little bit risky, but Trump does want to bring jobs back to the United States, and this may be a way of doing it, but I don't know. I don't want to. I'm with Liz too. I don't want to start a trade war. We start bidding up tariffs because that's happened in the past.
Liz, let me ask you something else. Doug Bergen.
Yeah,
you've seen him and so forth. Did you know that Governor Doug Bergen, who may be vice president or may be energy secretary or whatever, smart fella, he looks a lot like George Washington? Have you ever looked at that? He looks.
No.
This is.
I do think he has remarkable eyebrows. Well, just to kind of stand up for my powers of observation.
There you go.
But I've never seen the likeness to George Washington.
If you line up the pictures, George Washington, Doug Bergen, plus somebody. You know how you can use graphics now to age people. So if you actually age Doug Bergen and then put him next to George Washington, they look exactly alike. It's phenomenal.
You have to go bald.
Well, no, but of course, Washington had a wig, Steve. That's what we're all going to do now. We're going to have wigs. But, so I had Bergam on the show last night. It was great fun. Katie Pavlich, who's very smart, she was on the set with Charlie Hurd and Katie. So they're finished, and she saw Bergam coming on, and she said, ask him why he looks like George Washington. So I had this long interview with Bergam, serious interview, and at the end of it, I said, did you know you look like George Washington? Then I asked him, and then he was completely taken aback. And then I said, how long have you looked like George Washington? He says 10 seconds. Anyway, this kind of hit the media news wires. But I don't know, it may be time for a new George Washington, and it could be Doug Bergam.
That is so funny.
Dial up your thing, and you'll see the remarkable thing. I have one last thing before we adjourn. Mr. Trump, he said, Donald Trump has always said this, and he said it before the CEOs at the Business Roundtable last week. But Steve Moore, start with you. Foreign kids, if you go through American college and get a diploma, you should get a green card with your diploma. What do you think of that, Steve Moore?
Totally brilliant. We need to about double the number of legal immigrants. And that comment struck me as well because I was there as well. And he's spot on. You call them the brainiacs, Larry, and boy, do we need them. And these are people, we've educated. It makes no sense that we send them back to, Japan or China or Europe. And this is one of the things that makes America great. And I know we're on time. I want to say this. I think if Trump wants to slam dunk, he has got to pick. The former governor of South Carolina. They got to kiss and make up, and that's the way he's going to win the election.
Thank you, Steve Moore. I I with you 100%.
Yeah, I mean, it's no one else. The only one who moves the needle for Trump is the governor of South Carolina, and
Nikki Haley.
Nikki Haley, and she's going to bump him up by 3 or 4 points. It would be so Larry, your job is to talk him into that, okay?
I'm still waiting for diplomas and green cards. How did we get to Nikki Haley? Holy cow.
I don't know. I love that. I actually put out a piece yesterday at The Hill, which trended all day. I think it's still trending.
How about H-1B visas?
Both of them.
It's he wants to close the border, but the brainiac should stay here.
Yeah, I love it.
By the way, Larry, what you're talking about is an addendum to his completely common sense immigration policy that he did loft during his presidency, which prioritized people who could make an addition.
You're right. You're right. No,
and it was a very good idea.
Got to go. Liz Peek, thank you ever so much. Steve Moore, thank you ever so much. Folks, I'm Kudlow. We'll be back next weekend.
Long Island is more exciting than ever at Jake's 58 Casino Hotel. Get ready to zoom into some serious cash with Zoom Ball every Wednesday in June. Win up to $500,000. 1 point equals 1 entry. 2 lucky winners will be drawn at the top of every hour from 1 to 5 p.m. to play Zoom Ball. Discover the excitement at Jake's 58 Casino Hotel.
If gambling is a problem for you or someone, please call the 24-hour toll-free helpline at 877-8-HOPE-NY or text NY.